Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out more Nanmu models as we have the second versions, the second variants of the Nanmu Baryonyx here to take a look at, which means we have the alternate color variation of the standing, the alternate color variation of the laying down relaxing nesting type version, and then we also have the alternate base, which the base is of course the same sculpt. All of the figures here are the same sculpt as the ones that we had just taken a look at, but with the two Baryonyx, the paint schemes are kind of flip-flopped, and then the base has more of a brownish paint scheme, similar to what I was saying in the first review, where they kind of give the coloration of the earthy area and the base and everything a similar coloration to the dinosaur that's laying down and nesting, because it's a perfect idea to have that kind of similar coloration, because the dinosaur would probably choose an area that looks, similar in color to its body, so it can kind of camouflage itself and camouflage its nest and everything like that. So very awesome idea on the part of Nanmu. One thing I didn't mention, and I don't know if you're too familiar with this fact, but something that's interesting about the Nanmu models, they've been doing it for a while, is the sides of the boxes are actually color coordinated to show off which version you have here. So this obviously having a brownish coloration here means that this is more of the brownish base, and then if you take a look at like the standing version this time has the bluish coloration here on the side, so this is the bluish standing version. So don't know that I've ever actually pointed that out before. I figured I'd point that out right now to you guys, but regardless, I'm so excited to take a look at the second versions of these, so let's pop them out of the box right now. So first and foremost, we have the art cards, and of course, being that there are two Baryonyx here, we again have two of the art cards. If you missed the first review of these figures, you can see we have a really nice art card here, an image of a Baryonyx, the standing version in this set, in a nice snowy setting, and then you can also kind of see like a silhouette of a pterosaur that's flying by here, so obviously it has struck the attention of the Baryonyx, who is now aiming that attention at the pterosaur. And then here on the back we have kind of like this hand-drawn look for the art here, and I love this side of the card. I've said that every single Nanmu review. I absolutely adore the kind of hand-drawn images. It's just something that I really have always been a big fan of. I think ever since the Dinosaur Heresies, the Robert Bacher book, had kind of illustrations like this, I've always been a giant fan of this, and even back to the days of like Jurassic Park and some of the concept art and everything, it's just always been something that I've always really loved, is like hand-drawn dinosaur images, so definitely love those art cards. And then we also have our fish, which again is a species of gar, but of course the fish comes unpainted. However, after my last review, I knew I was going to be getting a second fish, obviously with the other round of Baryonyx coming, so I went ahead and took my initial fish, the initial gar, and gave it a nice paint job so that we can see how nice the detailing looks, because one thing that we couldn't really see too well in the initial review was the detailing of the gar, because again, being unpainted, it's so bright, the camera just doesn't pick up the details so well. So I was really excited to see just how highly detailed the actual gar was, so I went ahead and painted one up, obviously for my collection, but also I wanted to have it painted in time for this review to show off just how good that fish is. And of course, if you get this, you can always paint your fish up to look as, realistic and lifelike as you would like. And then we've got our very small base, and then we've also got the very large base. So we've got the area for the nesting Baryonyx, we've also got the area for the standing Baryonyx, and you can of course either attach the standing Baryonyx to the smaller base, or you can attach the standing Baryonyx to the larger base, as there is a peg right there. So it's really your call as to how and where you would like to display your Baryonyx figures. And then here is Santiago, the standing version, now with that kind of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom style. Ooh, I didn't put that on. There we go. We had to turn the base a little bit. Fallen Kingdom style paint job. And then we also have the laying down version, which is Calypso right there. And now we have them all here together, and they look awesome. And honestly, I don't know which one I really prefer, but I think I'm leaning more toward this one, because again, I always associate browns with females, and I just feel like the brown color of this looks more natural as a female. This looks a little more natural as a male, not even taking into consideration the names and everything of the figures, but I just feel like this, in my opinion, looks a little more like a male and female in the right positioning and everything. But of course, depending on your preference, depends on which version you would like to buy. But they look incredible with these paint schemes, again, flip-flopped in comparison to the previous version. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look right now. So just like with the previous version, the standing Santiago version, on the last review, we have now the brownish paint scheme here. But again, on the Calypso version, the laying down version, and you can see that the paintwork is really, really beautifully applied to this one, just like it was on the standing version. And again, I love the coloration. Like, just coming back here into the neck, look at how much color they have included in this. Like, so many different tones of color, and they all just transition back and forth in a super smooth and natural way. It's things like this that really amp up the paint jobs, I think, of the Nanmu figures and make them so much more lifelike than most companies are producing, because it really creates a very nice realistic looking skin tone for your figures and just, again, amps up the realism so much, which is always, probably the best thing you can do when releasing a dinosaur model, is make sure that the paint job looks as good as possible, because if you produce figures that are really nice looking sculpt wise but have really lame, lazy paint jobs, you're never really going to succeed. People are just going to kind of stray away from you. But Nanmu continues to not only release very high quality sculpts, but they continue to improve all the time when it comes to their paint jobs, and continuously deliver paint jobs that are as high quality as their sculpts. And I feel like that is one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, but definitely one of the top reasons, I think, as to why Nanmu is as popular as they are, and why they, in my opinion, are leading the charge as far as dinosaur collectibles go right now. And you can see that the paint job, again, over here on this side of the face looks fantastic, just like it did on the initial side. Really nicely painted eye. Now, it's kind of hard to get into the eye on this side because the camera's like in the way here. We can kind of get in here. There we go. You can see how nice that eye paint is, with a beautiful blue, nice black pupil, nice gloss coat over the eye as well. They've defined the nostrils nicely with a darker coloration, and again applied all of the paintwork here on the face with some really nice dry brushing and many different tones of color, potentially some washes included in there as well. The teeth, of course, have that super realistic and lifelike look, like the teeth of all Nanmu models always do. They kind of have almost a translucent type of a look, and I really don't think you will see any more of a realistic mouth or like the teeth or anything on any other company's models than what you see on Nanmu. You could just see how insanely lifelike and realistic those teeth look. Like, they genuinely look like a living, breathing animal's teeth. You can see the eye over here again is beautifully placed. If my camera would focus on it, there's absolutely no sloppiness in that eye area. It is picture perfect as far as the placement of the eye. I also love the paintwork up here on the head. Like, you can see some really nice, my camera would focus on that as well, some really nice like dry brushing and stuff. But the way they've made the scales pop, it's just so appealing to look at. And then, of course, as we run down the back of the neck, you can see that again we have the really nice variations of yellows and browns moving down the course of the neck. We're not going to review the sculpts again because we've already reviewed the sculpts of these guys in the initial review. We just basically need to look at the paint applications. But you can again see that those brown, yellow, and even a darker brown stripes continue down the course of the entire back, just like we had seen on the previous version, and they run all the way out here onto the tail, but they do stop right here. And we still have some of the variations of browns, but the yellow stops there. As we continue out, though, we still have that striping back and forth, minus the yellow, but we have the two different variations of browns, kind of a dark brown and a reddish brown, as we run out the course of the tail. But then running down here along the side of the dinosaur, again, you can see so many different varying tones of color, with even hints of greens, some darker and lighter browns, reddish browns, kind of like some burnt umber browns. We also have some washes included, some really nice dry brushing. You can see in the course of the stomach there, like you can see yellowish brown tones, as well as some nice light off-whites and some darker browns, and even actually some yellow tones. Like you can see, I just hit the camera, but you can see some nice yellowish tones here that have been applied with like a wash, and they just creep in and out of each of the scales so beautifully. And then, of course, you can see the brown striping down the course of the leg. And I always am so impressed with the Nanmu models and how smooth their paint apps always are. Like, looking at those stripes, they are just applied in the absolute most naturalistic way possible. And on top of that, again, the dry brushing that they apply to their figures, expertly I might add, always makes the detail pop so nicely. And then on top of all of the other elements of realism with these models, you can see in the nails, I always feel like the Nanmu models not only go above and beyond to give us the best possible paint jobs, but you can see that they also have some of the most realistic nails, I think, when it comes to dinosaur and prehistoric models, because they don't just give you one solid color and call it a day. They usually give you like a nice dry brushing over, or in this case, like you can see, it starts out with a black and then transitions to a brown, and then they cover it up with a nice gloss coat, so again, they shine like real nails would. Nanmu just always does such a phenomenal job, and again, just gives you the most realistic, I think, paint jobs of any company out there. That I don't think anybody right now can touch Nanmu as far as their overall realism of their paint jobs. And you can see that again, the coloration looks great throughout the entire course of the figure. Nicely painted fingernails and everything up here on the hands. And again, the paintwork over here, even on the side that's kind of compacted down due to the Baryonyx laying down, you can see that they don't get lazy anywhere. Like, even though this is a side you really wouldn't see when displayed, they still paint it up in the most realistic way possible. And again, kudos to Nanmu for never ever going lazy or anything on us. Like, they just always give you the highest of quality with their models. And look at so many different varying tones of color as you run along the tail. That's just crazy. Absolutely beautiful to look at are these Nanmu models. That is a very nice laying down version, the Calypso version of the Baryonyx with the brownish paint scheme on it. And again, I really like the brown one as the female because I just feel like it looks more natural as a female with the brownish tones. And then we have our Santiago, the standing version, and you can see, just like with the Calypso in the previous review, we have that very nice Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom style paintwork to this Baryonyx with some really nice realistic looking paint application, of course, in the face. Like, I like how they've dry brushed even some pinks and stuff over certain areas. You can even see some of the pinks coming down here to the lower jaw and highlighting some of the scales. Very nice tone of blue back there. That's something that is very significant as far as the coloration of a Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Baryonyx. You can also see that beautifully painted eye with a nice orange, and the coloration of the eye stands out wonderfully when it comes to the coloration of the body around it. And I'm very intrigued to see the inside of the mouth. That's one area that I was so psyched about on the initial release as far as the other version that I had of this Baryonyx, because I felt like the tongue was one of the most realistically painted tongues that I've ever seen, and this one definitely has, again, just as realistic looking of a paint job on the tongue. You can see the texturing and everything is phenomenal, but that paintwork just looks so realistic. And just like I've been stating, again, that's a perfect example of how far Nanmu goes to give you the best possible product when it comes to their paint jobs, and that is just a phenomenal and extremely realistic looking tongue right there. And of course, like usual, that paintwork does not just cease right there. Look at that. That is insane how nice that looks in there. Again, it looks like it genuinely has a throat. It looks so lifelike, and you can see the upper side of the inside of the mouth. That detail is off the charts, and the paintwork really makes it pop, really brings that detail out, and shows you how insanely realistic it looks in there. And of course, the teeth have that very cool, almost translucent type of a look like you always see on your Nanmu models, again ironing out the realism factor of this Baryonyx. And we have the very nicely painted eye over here, as well as the nicely painted nostrils right there, very nicely highlighted with a darker coloration. And you can see again lots of different coloration applied to even the lower jaw. Like, they don't get lazy anywhere. They always give you just so much paint work. And as you start to move down the course of the neck, you see those nice darker blues and everything up here, but you can also see kind of like a brownish wash that's been applied to even the dark blue areas. So there's color just everywhere on the figure. Very nice kind of an outlining of an off-white that runs along the course of the blues. You also have even some variations of, like, I'd say like light browns and kind of like some blues and stuff. The further down into the lower part of the neck you get, even some hints of green down here in the throat, which is really nice to see. As we continue to run down the course of the figure, you can see different variations of the darker blues. Like, you can see a dark blue that kind of runs along the edges of this dark blue, and there even appears to be like some variations of like maybe some dark gray dry brushing that makes the scales pop very nicely, but there's also kind of like a brownish wash in certain areas as well. So again, tons of color on our Baryonyx. I really love, like I had stated in the last review, how reptilian the scales look on the hands. That just looks super neat to me. Something I've never really seen before is like scale detail on a dinosaur's hand portrayed that way. So I really like it on this Baryonyx because it's just kind of a breath of fresh air, so different and unique compared to so many other models. We have very nicely painted nails on this one, just like the previous one, but this time we have kind of like a brown that kind of dry brushes over the black, yet again showing how they always give you paint variation even in the nails. And the further back into the body we see some really nice light blue dry brushing, but again they make that light brownish type of a color underneath pop through those nice scales on the thigh area moving down into the foot. Again, look at the gloss coat on the nails. That looks like genuine nails right there. It's so nice and so realistic the way that they're painted. And again, like I was stating, you can see the different variations of color included in the nails as well. And then you can move out the length of the tail. There's not too much difference that runs the course of the figure paint-wise, not like the Baryonyx that was laying down where we had different variations of colors depending on different areas of the body. This one follows pretty much the same trend through the course of the body because that's exactly how the Fallen Kingdom version looked. And you can also see that again, that paintwork looks just as nice and precise over here as we had seen on the previous side. Really, really appealing looking. You also have that beautiful scale detail here running along the underside with that really nice light blue dry brushing. And again, they've allowed all of the scale detail to pop in the absolute most realistic of ways possible. So a phenomenal version of Santiago here with the standing version. And then we also have the base, which the base for Santiago is just this very small earthy area, but you can see how this one is painted very differently than the previous one. The previous one had more of a bluish look because the nesting dinosaur, the Calypso version, was the bluish version. This time we have a brownish version for the base, and it looks really nice, again, beautifully applied as far as the nice dry brushing they've given it and allowing the darker coloration to creep through, giving some life and depth to the paint job, but the texturing and everything is great as well. And then we have the other base here, the larger version, and of course again we could see actually many different variations of browns. I could see some light browns as well as like reddish browns included on this one, but again it's going to be a really nice visual when you put the Calypso version on here because she's a brownish coloration, so she's kind of going to mesh with the background here of this one, which will allow her to camouflage very nicely with the background, which again is a very nice element of realism to this model that I really adore. We also have the eggs over here that are painted with a nice white coloration, kind of like an off-white, but there's some variations of blues as well as browns included on those eggs, and then a nice speckling that runs the course of the eggs. They're kind of helping to camouflage them would be the slight hints of brown. It almost appears as though like the mother has taken some of the earth from around there, some of the dirt, and kind of sprinkled it over the eggs so that they're not so visible, and they kind of camouflage them that way, making them look slightly dirty and kind of blend in with the background. But again, really, really beautiful base for your Baryonyx pair. And then here on the underside, we can again see Santiago and Calypso and the Nanmu logo. And then we do have our Gar, like I had stated earlier, but the Gar here is unpainted, so you can't really see how nice the detailing is on the figure until you bring up the version that I had painted. And now you can really see how nice the detailing is of the Gar. So you can see that the fins and everything are fantastic looking as far as the sculpt, and the scales that run the course of the Gar are just perfect for a dark wash. And once you apply that dark wash, it really makes the detailing of the fish pop in the absolute most realistic way possible, which is a huge plus for the sculpt. Again, being just that whitish coloration, you really cannot pick up on how highly detailed the Gar is, but being a Nanmu release, you should expect it to be as highly detailed as it can possibly get. You can see even up here in the face, again, the detailing is just incredible. The gills look really, really beautiful, and even looking back here at the tail fins and everything, you could just see so much kind of like wavy detail and creasing and everything throughout the course of the fins. It just looks so incredible. And then if you turn it around, you may or may not have been able to pick up on the fact that there are wounds on our Gar, because of course the Baryonyx is bringing it over to feed it to its significant other, but you can see now that I've actually painted them out, you can see how the wounds are just kind of cut all over the place. We have 3 slices along the back of the fish here. We have some more down here, as well as puncture wounds up here, potentially from the teeth, I would imagine, of the Baryonyx when it caught the fish. But again, you can see how nice the sculpt work is, not only of the wounds, which actually go right up over the top of the fish, and also onto the underside, but just in general, the Gar itself is just incredible looking as far as a detailing standpoint. So once you apply some paintwork to your Gar, it just really amps up the realism by a mile on the fish and just shows you how beautiful this is as far as an extra goes, as far as that little bit to add to the diorama to complete the scene. This is a beautiful, beautiful addition. And then once you have your baryonyx applied to their bases, again, it creates one incredibly awesome diorama, especially once the fish is painted. I think it really amps up the overall beauty of the scene that it is portraying. But like I had stated earlier with the standing version, the Santiago version, you can leave it on the base standing here on its little base and put it here behind the female, and it still creates a really nice diorama. The earthy areas match up quite nicely. Or you can, of course, take your baryonyx off, and then you can apply it over here. Again, there's a hole on the bottom of the foot, a peg on the base. You just slide it on there, and now your baryonyx is part of this diorama, and you don't need that little earthy area over there. You can just keep the two together, so it kind of appears as though the male has just come over here, dropped off the fish right here for the female, and she is very thankful for that meal. Regardless, no matter which way you go, which way you choose to display your baryonyx, they're going to look awesome because it's a Nanmu model, so of course it is incredible. As far as the size goes, and we did measure these in the initial review, but we'll measure them again just in case you missed the initial review. For a length on Santiago, the standing version, you are looking at about the 9 3/4 inch range, or closing in on about 25 centimeters. And then for a height, which it's going to be tough. If we go from the ground to the height of the baryonyx here, the Santiago version, you can see we are looking at about actually you can't really see it because it's a little bit of an awkward spot, but I'd say about a little over 4.5 inches, or around 11.5 centimeters, maybe closing in on 12. And then if we get that one out of the way completely, for Calypso back here, for a length, actually if we go from the snout, I think, to the tip of the tail, just shy of 9.5 inches, or 24 centimeters. And then for a height, she's not very tall because she's laying down, but you were looking at about 3.5 inches, or 9 centimeters roughly, to the top of the head. And the base is actually quite long as well. For a length on the base, you were looking at about just shy of 10 inches. I'd say maybe about 9 3/4 inches, around 25 centimeters, just actually like the standing Santiago version of the baryonyx. But for the fish as well, just in case you're interested, it's about 3.5 inches, or 9 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Nanmu Baryonyx pair. And you can see that these figures do sport a really nice size, not huge by any means, but the addition of both of the figures here on the base definitely makes it a pretty large, pretty impressive size diorama here. And I think in comparison to these figures right here, you should easily be able to see that. And then for a second comparison, and this is a comparison I'm very excited to check out, here is the initial with the newest versions of the baryonyx that I've reviewed. So you can see how both are basically flip-flopped here with the paint jobs. So per base, per style, you have the brownish version down there on the brownish base, or you have the bluish version on the bluish base, and you have the, again, brownish version as the standing Santiago version, or the bluish version as the standing Santiago version. So it's neat how they kind of flip-flop them here to give you basically whatever version you would like as whatever version you would like. So you can have the brown be the female, or you can have the blue be the female. It's up to you, but they honestly look so cool together, and it can create some really neat different versions of these dioramas if you swap and mix figures. Like, for instance, we can now swap the baryonyx, so we have an entire brown family over here, or an entire blue family over here, which is definitely fun to, do. If you buy both versions, you can create some pretty cool, again, swapping here, mixing and matching as far as the baryonyx goes. Or you can just create one giant baryonyx pack, as we would have, some browns and blue versions mixed together. Whatever route you take, they're both awesome decisions to go with, and as per usual, Nanmu again knocks it straight out of the park as far as these releases. So this second variant of the Nanmu Baryonyx pair are, yet again, fantastic, and they are beautifully sculpted, beautifully painted, just like the initial round of Baryonyx figures were, but just flip-flopped as far as the paint schemes go this time around. And I think they've done a great job on the application of the paint on these, just like they did the initial round of figures, with some very nice, very naturalistic and realistic application of the paint, perfectly capturing the likeness of the Fallen Kingdom version of Baryonyx, I think, with the bluish version, But you also have the beautiful brownish version here with the really striking yellow striping along the back. You know, again, both of them are brilliantly painted as far as Nanmu's models go, and I think that Nanmu never declines in quality ever. Like, they just continue to one-up themselves every single time, and I feel like they are yet again raising the bar as far as this Baryonyx release goes. Just like with the initial round of Baryonyx figures, all of the paintwork is very nice and naturally applied, super smooth transitions back and forth between colors, really nice dry brushing in certain areas to make the detail pop, as well as some nice washes applied in other areas to, again, help make the detail pop. They make sure that you take note of every ounce of detail on their figures, on their sculpts, and they do a great job of doing just that, providing us with, like I had stated earlier, in my opinion, the best factory paint jobs you get from any company are right here with the Nanmu figures. And again, specifically these Baryonyx, since this is what we're looking at right now, these are perfect examples of just how high quality the overall final product of a Nanmu model is. The sculpts perfectly as well replicate the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Baryonyx, which is exactly what they are meant to do, and they look, again, just like they did in Fallen Kingdom sculpt-wise. Of course, we only have, one version per release as far as the paint job goes that would look like the Fallen Kingdom version. But that's coloration-wise. Both of the sculpts, look exactly as the Baryonyx do in Jurassic World, so they've done a great job of replicating that appearance in the models, and on top of giving us that very cool Jurassic World-style Baryonyx sculpt and paint job, they've given us an incredible diorama, an incredible scene here with a nesting Baryonyx, as well as a male Baryonyx walking up to provide the female with something to eat, which is a very nice and realistic scene that definitely would have taken place when these dinosaurs were alive. And then, of course, the actual fish itself, like I had stated in the first review, is really nicely detailed, but you really couldn't see how nicely detailed it was until I applied this paintwork, or at least I don't think so anyway. But hopefully my paintwork has done the fish justice, has brought it to life in a nice natural way where you guys could see how nice the actual sculpt of the fish really is, because it is just as highly detailed, honestly, as the dinosaurs are, but you really couldn't see due to how bright it was on the camera with the initial review. So hopefully now having this paintwork on it, it can show you how incredible the fish truly is sculpt-wise and how nice of an addition it is to the set. The base itself as well is incredibly well done, so much incredible texturing throughout the course of the base. Beautiful looking nest with some really nice and precise paintwork throughout the course of not only the eggs in the nest, but the base in general, having many different variations of browns as well as that nice kind of a darker coloration underneath, making the base look as realistic and lifelike as possible as well. So these Baryonyx are incredible. No matter which version you choose, they're both absolutely awesome. So make sure you head to the link in the description to Dan's Dinosaurs. Place an order for these Baryonyx right now. Make sure you get these in your collection because in my opinion, they are a must-have, especially if you are a fan of Jurassic World. These are definitely must-haves. So make sure you check that link in the description. Go head on over to Dan's Dinosaurs and pick these up for yourself. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.